American artist Tenzing Rigdol, whose parents came from Tibet, says with good attention, anything that one does becomes art. That has been the underlying philosophy of Rigdol's works, including a major installation titled Biography of a Thought, which was inaugurated at the Metropolitan Museum in New York on September 19th and will be on display until January 12th, 2025. It is part of the exhibition titled Mandalas Mapping the Buddhist Art of Tibet. Rigdol reinterprets the centuries-old Tibetan mandala style of painting by incorporating modern-day motifs and themes on panels several feet wide and high, with painstaking attention to initial drawings and then choosing paint. This particular installation was in the making for 5 years. Tenzing Rigdol spoke to Mayank Reports. Welcome to Mayank Report. It's a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you, sir. And it's a great pleasure to be here. And
I was watching your interview on the Met as part of the installation video.
Yes.
And you said something quite striking. I want to start with that. You said, with good attention, anything that you do becomes art. That's a lovely statement. And the kind of art that you do requires so much attention. Tell me about how you first came to be an artist.
I sometimes get that question in different combination. But actually, my surprise is, why isn't anybody painting? Why aren't people artists? It's like, for me, it's almost like I don't remember when I was not an artist. Like from children, we were always drawing, we were always, and so I always encourage people to paint, even to collectors, curators, everyone. So one of my friends says, if you ask Rigdol about any problem, he will say there is a solution, and it's just be part of art, like paint, But when I say paint, I don't mean paint like him or try to become like someone. So I have friends who come sometimes have problems, and I say, no, don't worry, come up in the balcony I take and just paint. And they'll say, oh, no, I'm a physicist, I don't paint. So they have all this definition of who they are not. And I said, no, but you can see the leaf, yeah? And they say, yeah, but when you look at it with like your genes. The science says like your genetics is 20 million of tantra, unbroken chain of that gene. So you are looking with 20 million of experience. And of course, when you look at a leaf and when I look at it, we are looking at the same thing. It's going to look different. In that differences, we find art, nuances. And at the same time, nothing to be proud of, but just you're unique, beautiful. But then slowly, when you pay even when you pay attention to a flower, you discover your uniqueness. But when you pay attention to attention, you discover yourself. So
that's wonderful, yeah.
In so many ways, art really is attention. If you look at art from a method, technique, slowly, I think some other entity is going to replace that, like AI is going to come with a product.
Right.
Then we're going to say, how is my product different than AI product? At that time, I think then we get into the zone of attention.
See, that's a great distinction you made. I'm so glad you said that, because AI cannot pay attention the way a human being can, right? AI is not attentive like we understand attention. And I think that's a great distinction that people need to know. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, and also I think we can relate to like your meeting with His Holiness. I'm sure you might have some meetings in the video.
Right.
Some meetings right in front, like the pranic energy. There's difference, definitely. You get it? Like looking at a picture and having the presence of the person. So sometimes when you talk about present, being in present, it might mean being here with all of your attention. So that's why in India, the words are even better. Like in Latin, I think ars, A-R-S, means to imitate, copy, or a method or technique. Whereas in in Indian tradition or in the Eastern tradition, we would say like Chitrakala.
Chitrakala, yes.
And Chitra means Chitta means awareness. Chitta means that which shines. Chitta means that which is always there. And then that which doesn't move, and Kala means Kal, means
Right,
time. There's always motion, there's gati. And when you weave this time with awareness, they say, that's when the art is. And then that makes it extremely rich, you know. And then immediately you say, what does it say in Tibetan language? In Tibetan language, we call Yuma or Gitzel. Gitzel is comes from very interesting again. They say a state of awareness are like in the four planes, you know. And
right,
the third plane is Yuma. And from there, all this all this of expression without so much of I thought.
right.
That's where they say you are absolutely free to give expression, and you're not really giving expression, but you're just like fitting your expression in the grand expression, you know. So there in the East, art has so much.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I prescribe more towards those. I like to look at the richer definition and
Right.
yeah,
It's almost meditation. Art as a form of meditation. It does become meditative after. I was looking at some of the clips in your video,
yes,
especially where you were painting and you're talking
yes,
about the brush tip touching the canvas and that contact.
yeah,
I could see that everything else falls away and
yeah,
you're just into that little point. It is
yes.
almost like a single point meditation that you are engaged in.
Uh, uh, it will be very amazing, I think, when people start painting, because that's where you're really talking about process, no? Because otherwise, sometimes we can talk about the issue in its aboutness around, like circumambulating the stupa. But here we're talking about like the Uber is really driving in your bedroom. You know? So you're talking about then shouldn't we even talk when you are really let's say when I want to listen to someone in the other room, first thing I do is I put my earlegs. But if I can't hear it, one thing I do is I close our other senses. I close my eyes. And so I focus everything in my ear. Is that? So
Right.
similarly, what happens when you're drawing, when the brush is there, the tip of the brush, and you're drawing it, at that time, naturally what you see is your breath would stop. You get it? Like your breath would stop. When the breath stops, at that time your finger moves wherever you want it. But it has to be the will is very soft will. It's not like I want to drive, not like that.
True, true, true. Absolutely.
And then the minute you feel a little bit interruption in your mind, I have to lift the brush. If I force it,
It wouldn't
and
happen. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I really think neuroscience and many things can come together. In a
Absolutely.
research with art and see really what happens to a very disturbed mind when they paint, you know, what happens to the chemical. These are things we can do research, and according to East art, uh, in whether singing or anything, art, through art you can enlighten, so you forget
Right.
about like small things. So it can heal, basically art can heal you. That's what the final claim in the East is, you know. And even
True.
in Buddhism, everything, half of Buddhism, Kerim, generation stage is art actually. You're using the imaginative power to defeat your crazy imagination.
Right. Right.
So,
Tell me how you came to do mandalas, because I mean there are several interpretations. One of when you do powder mandalas, for instance, the idea is you do such intricate work for such a long time, and then you basically wipe it away to underline impermanence of life and the universe. The mandalas that you do are obviously relatively permanent. They are already on a surface. How did you come to do mandalas as painting rather than powder?
I mean, mandalas in Tibetan tradition, there are actually three-dimensional mandalas we make with
Right.
the wooden. We also make with sand. We also do with painting. You know, all these different styles. And I studied them as you
Okay.
know. But the interesting thing is Mandela really did evolve, but the core concept is the same. In Tibet, when it reached, it became very elaborate, and But also, if you look at the stories, then you'll get like, oh, Mandela is not. It it might actually give us an idea of, yeah, maybe it doesn't have to be that complicated too. For example, this great Tibetan lineage of Telopa,
Right.
Naropa, Marpa,
Right.
Milarepa, these great masters. And one day, this Telopa, the the grandfather of Kagyu, and Telopa said, I want to give you one empowerment to all the students there. There were like a few students, and he said, I want to give empowerment. So right now, can somebody make a sand painting, sand mandala? There's nothing there. So Naropa got up, his disciple, the main disciple, he got up, he lifted his dhoti, he peed and he turned, he circled around and he made a pea mandala.
Oh, really?
And then Telugu said, wonderful, you get great. Now it's a good omen, auspicious. Now I give you the teaching. So in so many sense, mandala is really about like gathering everybody's attention, and then after they create the mandala, it's the teacher who's really instructing them on
Right.
deciphering those things and really. So even mandala, man means manas, mind, dala
Right.
means put mind in there, or to really in from a textual point of view, mandala is something that uh, includes all the technology of our tool called magical technology, the complete medical technology. This,
Right.
so there are many things like that, but not nothing serious. But I did study. My first mandala that I studied was compassion mandala from a
I see.
reading teacher. Then I studied Yamantaka, and slowly I just read scripture now. But yeah, I did the painting just because, yeah, the installation, everything I
Right.
saw. In the center, I wanted to do a sand, but then later I thought, you know what, let complicate it less. Then I
Right.
just had the painting panel there.
True. I'm talking about the installation at the Met. How did that come to be? Because I was watching the video, the official Met video, where you talk about the curator asking you to get involved with that at some point. And I suppose it must have taken quite a while for you to put this together. Tell me a bit about the process that went into creating such large works in such a large space.
Yeah, actually, uh, the curator, Met curator Kurt,
Right.
met like 10 years ago, 2014,
I
where
see.
we had a show, a small exhibition then, uh, and uh, and we had a good, and the show was quite very successful. And after that, I got involved in a lot of other things. So I'm always like a nomad at that time,
Right.
doing research and traveling research. That's all I did. So then I was in the time I opened a residency in Dharamsala. It's called Dialogue Artist Residency,
I
where
see. Okay.
I bring artists, philosophers, scientists, and make the awareness bounds with one another. That was the idea. And then around that time, pandemic was starting. I came to New York, and at that time, Kurt said, "Are you still interested in one more? Like we'll do a good show." I said, "Yeah." And then we looked at the space. Space was really beautiful, and then uh, we start working on it. When we start signed the contract, right after 2 or 3 days, we had a lockdown, and
I
then
see.
after 5 years or so, and then this show happened. So I worked on it for about over 5 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, yeah, and then that's the result. So, and also, of course, I have uh, 9 people helping me, assistants.
Right.
So wonderful friends, and some are like relatives.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
So obviously, it's your concept, it's your color. So there is a bit in that video where you say that every color that goes into it is chosen by you, even 50 shades of blue, for instance.
yeah, I'm
Uh,
really, yeah, I'm when it comes to art, I think I yeah, in the very beginning, I asked the permission, like, this is where I dance, like, I'm
I see.
really greedy. And of course, I encourage everyone to paint. So everybody that works with me are also they're painting. They show me their work. I comment on them. So it's all good. But the thing is, yeah, I have to draw everything. I have to fix the color, everything, and yeah, I have to be in the studio every day. But I love studios, so I almost sleep there. So, but yeah, yeah, that's just my practice, I think,
Right.
and especially when I pick up subject matter when I paint, I make sure I just get lost in it and just
Right.
drawn, and in a way I really don't connect with outside world. Yeah.
Given the scale of the works, how do you visualize? That's number one, and after that, how do you execute? Are there grids? How? I mean, I'm trying to understand because it's so detailed,
Yeah, yeah,
and it is so symmetrical.
yeah,
It's almost geometrical in some places.
yeah.
How do you come to that process? I mean, I'm sure it's very taxing as an artist.
Uh, I think you pay enough attention, you start seeing the empty space more. Like it's like when I move to like a new studio or office, a house. First, you see everything nice, and then
Right.
after 2 3 days, oh, there's a crack, small crack. Oh, this. So
Right.
basically, I think our eyes are trained to look look at something different.
Right.
And when you force that eye to look at the same thing, something magical happens, I think. Because the eye doesn't want to get bored, but at the same time, how to not get bored looking at something completely empty. So
True.
I think then within you, things start coming. Like the mind starts suggest, like they get nervous. The mind get nervous to stare at empty canvas and like, hey, Rigdol, how about this shade? And from inside, they come like a placard, and then
Right.
but then once there's attention, it's I have noticed something. I don't know how to put it in words. You'll pick a color, you'll imagine, you'll see it fits. It doesn't fit just visually. It enters visually, but it fit with your whole body. Oh, this color fits. And you put there, and then sometimes what I do, now what if I replace this color with logic? Now I put all these different colors.
Right.
None of that worked. And I said, that is so strange. It seemed like in that moment, I went through all the color at once.
Okay.
But somehow I came up with the color that my whole being decided, which when I analyze rationally also, it matches. And then I call this is called maybe instinct, what is happening. And that thing I can develop more and more when I believe in my attention. After
I was looking at the works. They are sort of reinterpretation of the mandala tradition because some of the motifs that you use are very modern, very urban. In fact, some of them are even very American.
yeah,
The images.
yeah.
How did you come to decide that? Because I think that there's an image of George Floyd.
Yeah, there's George Floyd, the Vietnam's first self-immolation. There's Dalai Lama, 25 years
Right.
old, a
Right. I
Tibetan
saw that.
Chinese hat. There's, of course, there's all these issues about world conflicts, Sudan, Palestine, uh, East Turkestan,
Right.
Hong Kong. And so all this basically, the second panel is what do you call Chitta Vritti. It is
Right.
when Vritti happens, what happens?
Yeah.
And the third one is about the Nirodha. You're talking about how to Nirod. And
Right.
the first one is basically, in a way, you can look at it. The first one has many layers. You can also look at it like, oh, it's talking about something very natural phenomena, global warming, the air pollution, water pollution, this thing. But again, if you peel off the layer, maybe it's also talking about Tantra, the fourth dimension of existence. That's how it correlates to four chakras. And these are all there. And then it also talks about, you can look at it, oh, Judaism talks about some kind of light that a prior to sun and everything. Oh, wait, there's Hinduism talk about chitta, this awareness, this shining. Oh, wait, they talk about Atman, which means breath. It's something to do with breath. Wait, the Islam talk about ruha. It's like a
Right.
breath breathing into. So I see all religion, you know, talking about in different perspective and all. And I like to I belong to a generation who always like to look at good things and what
Absolutely.
common things and what makes us all unifies, you know.
Right.
So somebody said in Tibetan, "Oh, you made a Buddha." I said, "No, no, it's for I created an ocean. People come here, some believers, some non-believers, some Hindu, some Muslim, anybody can come.
Right.
But the accent is Tibetan because I was cultured in that way. But what
True.
I'm saying has nothing to do with Tibetan. What I'm saying has more to do with how we are all really connected. That's what, in so many ways, Vajrayana or Tantra or all these words are really emphasizing the center and the surrounding.
Right.
You know, so I like to look at it that way.
In terms of commercializing your works, because one has to survive too as an artist,
Yes, yes.
do you make a distinction between the kind of work, say, you've done for the Met, this installation, and the kind of work you think will sell at various places, including auction houses? How, or do you make that distinction? And if you do, how do you do it?
I've never thought art in that way.
I see.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's almost like I have a vision. It has to get out of my body. That's all.
I see.
So, and then afterwards, some would say this, that, you know, and but yeah, I've not worried too much about it. Yeah, I
Okay.
mostly think as an artist, I have to just focus on the work. That's I try to preserve that tradition, and I have like a agent who would help me sell the
Oh, I
book.
see.
So yeah, the
Okay.
gallery is Rossi Gallery.
Yeah, that's where I first communicated with.
Yeah, yeah. So they're like a perfect team to help me,
I see.
and my wife is there to help me. So they just, I think, much of my practice really depends on their kindness and their work. Yeah,
Do you also do other genres of paintings? Say, for instance, the name immediately that comes to my mind is, say, some form of impressionism, for instance,
yeah, yeah.
or abstract expressionism. Do you engage in those at all?
I do different, but it's like this. Uh, where can attention be? It can be anywhere. It's the, so
That's true.
I forget about it. I like poetry. I like singing. I study classical Indian music recently. I
Wonderful.
here, and there I studied swara, means also breath. Swara means also melody.
Yeah.
Swa, it's a self-arising. Ra means ragini, that fire. Again, it goes back to chitta. So
It does.
I'm always studying. I always studying. I'm always a student, and
Hmm.
whenever I find somebody who knows something, even it's like making a delicious dish, I'm right there with the book just to learn and see how it affects my tongue. And I'm just purely excited to learn from anybody who has paid attention and come up with something beautiful. And we exchange knowledge, share. And after all, we have to leave, no?
That's true.
So before we die, just make sure you have a good time with every. It's like a big airport. So uh,
Indeed.
yeah, so I just have good time, learn something. If I can teach, I'm very fortunate. If I get to teach, and that's all. Yeah, I think teaching is one of the most beautiful way of living. But yeah, like so that's all.
Yeah. What kind of other paintings do you like? Just to look at.
I I really like to see a painting where I somehow see the artist is completely lost,
Okay.
and then maybe I can also get lost, you know, or
Right.
some art would just pull you. I think it's almost like the artwork is consecrated by artist's attention. And in Tibetan tradition, there's a consecration tradition of paintings and all these things. And there's also a saying in Tibetan tradition where if you're an expert keba, if you pay really attention, you don't need to consecrate. It's automatically consecrated.
Right.
This is such a beautiful oral saying like that. And so for me, I work with pastel, watercolor, oil, acrylic, performance, digital. I try to more. I look at it more like these are results of my study, and
Right.
Met also result of my study. It's actually a student painting, but also I don't like your earlier. or for the mat different kind. No, for me every wall is a mat wall, and of course mat is wonderful where more people would go and look. But for me, I had shows at a basement which is as beautiful and as precious as the show in mat, and
Right.
that's be my practice, and not that I'm being too bald, like prattling or something. But just I genuinely believe that. I think
Right.
every painting I do, I um, I do it for do it with attention. Yeah.
Right. Looking at some of the pieces, it maybe I'm wrong, but tell me what you think. I also did see some Japanese uh, sort of ukiyo-e in some places influence. Have you been exposed to Japanese works in a significant way? Because at first glance, if I was just looking at it like a blur, because I'm a great admirer of ukiyo-e style of painting,
Oh,
floating world. And then yours is extraordinary in that sense. It struck
oh,
me immediately.
yeah. I think I have looked at a lot of works, but this particular name maybe I might have. But I've also looked at when I was in school. I love Hokusai, the
That's
way.
the one. That's
Oh,
the
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So in a way, I used to say, like, you know what, Hokusai has made these great waves hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and everybody is plucked from it. Nobody's
Right.
trying to like, can I? And I secretly told my friends I want to update and like upgrade, make this new wave, and then for that, I first panel I give tribute to him, but it doesn't look like this wave, but
I
kind
sense
of,
that.
yeah. And then I went to Astoria, Atlantic Ocean, we have the part of.
Right.
So I always go there, and I decided, you know what? If I really want to, always go to the source. My always theory is, I talk to some scholar, they will say, and I say which scripture, and I go to the source. So here also, I went to the source, looked at the wave for months of the Atlantic wave, months looking at it, and made about like 1 square feet. I kept just focus on that, maybe throw small stones and see how it moves, and then I'm moving with it. It's almost like I'm trying to find a breath pattern of the ocean that goes like this, and then I say, okay, now can I move water like this? And then I try, and it happens, and then somehow it works. So all the ocean that you see is Atlantic Ocean. I bought in the mat where the water is all from there.
Right.
And, of course, I think I'm influenced by all great masters of the past. My own Tibetan tradition. We had like great painters still living, some elders.
Absolutely.
And so they are all have been very kind, and even some I haven't met, but they still have been kind just by from a distance. You can see their work and appreciate. And in Tibet, there's so many artists, beautiful, wonderful artists. We did wonderful shows at Rubin and all. But then, right now, they're all, I think, couldn't come here. I think visa, everything is stopped. So, but yeah, I, yeah, I really like to be influenced and
Right.
inspired. So I collect past masters as my trophy, and I'm very
Yeah.
happy and proud, yeah, that I can learn from them. Yeah.
A lot of European masters of the late 18th century and 19th century, people like Vincent van Gogh, for instance.
Yeah.
Van Gogh was a passionate admirer of Japanese paintings. In fact, he picked a lot of the ideas from Japanese painting. I'm sure if he had been exposed to Tibetan paintings, he
Oh
would
yeah.
have done the same.
I
Unfortunately, he wasn't.
I loved Van Gogh when I first went to University of Colorado. I was 17 years old,
I see.
and when I first encountered Van Gogh, it was through a movie actually at the
Okay.
library. Kurt Douglas.
Kirk Douglas, that's a
That
classic. Yeah.
and we watched, and I thought like, wow, and it inspired me so much that I start carrying a pipe. It doesn't suit me, and I loved, and all I could take from it is he painted at 27, he died at 37. 10 years he dedicated, and you can still, there's 100,000 drums of him. And I studied more and more, and I realized, you know what? If Milarepa has painted, he would be Van Gogh. If Banco
Absolutely.
has meditated, he'll be Milarepa. I used to say, So I had this, the same kind of dedication was there, and I thought that I really got the pithy instruction from Wango. And
Fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, and then I have one professor, James McLehany, and
Mhm.
he gave me another really unbelievable what we call mantra. And when I was young, I'm always asking, "Dude, the colors are expensive. Come on, oil painting color. And I come from a modest family, so I'm
Right.
painting it slowly. And every color I'm asking, Professor, what do you think if I paint it red? At first, he was like, "Yeah, yeah, well, it might look good. Try it, and I'll try." And then the next, I would say, Professor, should I? And then I did that 5, 6 times. And then James McLeod, he came and he said, "Look, next time I Tenzing, next time you just ask the canvas. You don't ask me."
Right.
And then I was like, why did it take me months to understand that? And that's it. From then on, I only asked canvas. And he was,
That,
and
that's
at
a
the,
great tip.
and amazing thing is, at the exhibition, James McLeod, the professor, came at the talk and we met. And after this long years, like 20 some years, and I was reminding him, yeah, that was your instruction. I followed and I got here, all due to his simple instruction.
Right.